In this video on creativity and getting started, I want to draw your attention to a pretty simple, perhaps obvious idea that I think undermines a lot of the effort we put into writing sometimes. And this video, this workshop, is aimed at getting you to consider how to take a blank screen and make it not blank. And so in the theme of, or in the model of, the mode of getting started, this workshop is built at getting you to think about some tips for how to cultivate creativity and get started on the work. Don't think about creativity here as meaning, I'm going to create the next statue of David, for example, or something in that way, but rather creating, making, taking a blank space, putting something into it, taking that blank canvas, as it were, and filling it out. The idea in this workshop is a pretty straightforward one. We have trouble getting started sometimes and don't know what to do, and it's hard to think ahead and to work ahead, so we need to find ways to do that, which might include some things, cleaning your literal workspace, and cleaning your figurative workspace, your mind. But behind that idea is this idea of working towards something. So the top right-hand corner here of the workshop, you see this blank Word document. It's hard to write a paper sometimes when we don't know what we want to say. And so the idea of getting something onto a blank screen or even a blank piece of paper is intimidating sometimes because we don't know where we want to take something. So when you take something that's in your head and put it on paper, there might be some sense of vulnerability or fear of being judged. And that's okay, that's common, right? We want someone to see our ideas, but we don't want them to devalue them or to not esteem them or not, receive them well. So we have to kind of suspend that emotion for a second to get started, to put something on the page. And that might just be some bullet points. That might just be some themes, some keywords, the author's name. But really, once you build some sort of content in there, in that sentence, in that page, all of a sudden it's not as intimidating. Because that's the first hurdle, is getting something on the page. So how do you think ahead? How do you work ahead? And this is one of the more common pieces of advice. When you read, you shouldn't read with two hands on the book. You probably need a pen, a highlighter, some sort of utensil to work and write as you are reading. So for our courses, and for most university courses, you're not just reading to read. You're reading to do something after that, whether it's to understand, to explain, to summarize, to write. So if you write as you're reading, your notes, your workspace, the things that no one else is going to see, write as much as you want. Take as many notes as you want. And then when you're done and look back at your notes, you may be surprised at how much information you have. So the rhetorical reading notes worksheet's great for that purpose, right? When you write the summary. You take notes as you read a text, you annotate it, you record your ideas. All of a sudden you've got 2, 3, 4 pages of notes if you've been diligent in that way and answered questions, fully in complete sentences. And you can draw from those, right? These are your ideas, your gems, your sentences, your words, your syntax put together. Copy and paste it into your new document for your summary or for your project and say, oh, okay, it's not a blank screen anymore. So when you take notes, when you record your ideas, when you highlight, circle, asterisk, bold, whatever you're doing on the document, on the screen, on the piece of paper, you're taking notes and you're building, you're writing. And if you don't think you're writing, you might want to expand how you define writing. Writing is not just that thing you do when you turn in a paper, but writing is a thing you do while you're thinking critically about something. Writing is what you're doing when you're taking notes in a book. It's a long process, and the more you see it as a spread out process and not just one episode of you're sitting down to write a paper at 3 a.m. with a Red Bull, you'll see that you had already been thinking about it. And oftentimes, if you've ever been in the situation and you feel like you have nothing to put on the screen, you probably haven't started thinking about the thing yet. And that's why you need to start early on work. What am I going to write about? I'm going to write about the library. Well, what about the library? And as you think about things, you take notes, you jot down things, all of a sudden it's easier for you to have a conception of where you're going. So when you do sit down to write, you have an idea, a map of where you're headed, an itinerary, so to speak. So you're trying to plan ahead. So this might manifest in many ways, right? So brainstorming sessions or outlining sessions or mapping out. Visual maps are great. Where am I now? Where do I want to get to? What's my first idea? What's my last idea? Circles and squares and lines and all those things. Come to the Writing Center, have a conversation, or talk with your roommate about an idea. Any conversation where you can get the words out of your head into your mouth and out into someone's ears are great because you're getting feedback, live feedback. It's like market research. You feel more comfortable for having said the words and being able to say them again. You get live feedback so you know how they're received. Did that make sense when I said that? Did you understand what I'm talking about? How would you say that differently? That conversation, that dialoguing, that group conversation helps you to take an idea that's very ethereal and makes sense in your head and makes sense for others. Because at the end of the day, when you write for others. So if you've got a great idea and you can get it on paper, but you can't make it work for other people, it's not a very useful document if the goal is to make it useful for other people, if that's the measure, right? So another tip for you to consider is, and this is common for many writers, whether they're famed writers or just college students writing, it doesn't matter. Clean spaces, or the act of cleaning, is prefatory. It's prefatory and preparatory, right? When you clean a space, you're taking your time to make the space clean, which gives you the opportunity to not think about what you're doing. It's almost like a Zen thing. You separate yourself from the moment, right? You might go for a run. You might sit down for 5 minutes of restful breathing. You can really easily get some guided meditation. Here's a YouTube link for it if you want to take this. But basically, just sitting in place for 5 minutes and controlling your breathing while someone talks to you in a very soothing way, that's really relaxing, and it might help you to see things you're not already thinking about. That's not meant in any mystical way. It's only meant to say we think a lot, and we don't stop thinking. So if you stop thinking for a moment, whether it's to run 5 miles, whether it's to go lift weights, whether it's to go talk to someone over coffee and then come back to, or do yoga at the gym, it doesn't matter. You're cleaning the figurative space inside your head so you can stop and return to something. You need critical separation or critical distance. So these are all activities you can complete. One of my favorites is to actually clean my house. I will go through the house, clean everything, and about 30 minutes later, after I've done a surface cleaning, I feel better, the house looks nice, nothing's distracting me, I need to go do that. I need to go do the laundry, I need to go take the dog for a walk. And in that moment, I can return to what I'm doing and really focus in on something. Because multitasking when it comes to writing is a very dangerous tactic. If you have multiple tabs open, for example, you know what I'm talking about. So when you're cleaning your workspace, think about how you can get rid of distractions or potential issues. There are apps or programs or extensions you can download for your browser that can actually lock you out of using your internet for other things than just writing. Write a timer so you can set a goal. I'm going to sit for 30 minutes and write. Or I'm going to turn off my ability to access Facebook, or, well, probably not Facebook, but anything online that might distract you, news articles or just the news in general. And when you distract yourself, you can't work, so get rid of the distractions or the access to the distractions. There are some famous examples. I think Sir Thomas More, for example, had rosemary outside of his room in order to generate, good memory, or the ability to memorize things well. Proust wrote in a cork-lined room, as you see in this slide, so he could diminish sound. You don't have to go to these extremes, but the point is, these are markers of people who care enough about the surroundings to eliminate, to delimit distractions. They exist, they will exist. People will knock on your door and want to do something. You'll get an email from your professor. You'll have another class you're working on. You have a job to take care of, family responsibilities. Things will distract you, so you need to consider what efforts you can make to undistract yourself or make yourself less distractible. But at the end of the day, and this is kind of a vague, obvious statement, but just work. It sounds really utterly insanely simple, I think, but if you put words on a screen and you get a draft together, it doesn't matter how bad the draft is. You are that much further towards finishing your next step. And for our purposes, if you get ideas on a page and you get some feedback on them, that's one step forward. Take them to the writing center, get feedback. Brainstorm together at the writing center with a peer, or meet with your instructor, have a conversation. But no matter how you're doing the writing, and again we use that term loosely, not putting words on a page, but thinking critically about something, having a conversation with somebody about that thing, or putting words on a screen in the forms of notes, it doesn't matter. That's all part of the writing process. That's all writing loosely. And when you're doing those things, you are working on the idea. So when someone says, well, you're not writing right now, so you must not be working, well, that's not really necessarily true, right? If you're participating in those conversations and you're doing and engaging with the text, then you know you're writing and you're working forward. So in terms of getting started, the idea is to get started. You don't need to be super creative to start something. All you need to do is put that foot forward. Clean your space, clean your mind, put some fingers to the keyboard, and make the words appear on the screen. Have the conversation, engage the text. Those are the ways you get started, and those are the ways you can creatively, find new ways to maybe start your process.